Tensions between the U.S. and Russia are on the rise this week. The nations expelled diplomats from their respective countries and shut down embassies. The U.S. diplomatic staff in St. Petersburg, Russia, packed up after Moscow ordered the closure of the U.S. consulate and the expulsion of 60 U.S. diplomats. The backlash comes after Russia was accused of being involved in the poisoning of a former Russian spy and his daughter in the U.K. For more on this, we turn to Markos Kounalakis. He's a foreign affairs columnist for McClatchy News and a visiting fellow for the Hoover Institution. I want to make sure I get your name right there, Markos. Let's start with the article you've discussed, because you write that Putin's power and arrogance really has led to a costly Russian miscalculation. Detail what that is and how it came to be.
Sure. You know, what we're looking at is really a cumulative expression of what you rightly called for my column, the arrogance and power of President Putin. He has been getting away, he and his and those whom he's allowed and signaled to take certain actions have been getting away with really very aggressive actions throughout the last few years. You can look to the war in Ukraine, which is the most obvious of those. But also there are other aspects. There was an attempted coup, for instance, in Montenegro. There was the shooting down of the Malaysian airliner, the MH17. While there's, maybe a one handshake difference between the Kremlin and those who were on the ground who actually shot down that plane, there's a direct link. It was shot down with a Buk type of missile that belongs to Russia. And then we could go on and on. The 2016 presidential elections. And of course, now this poisoning that took place in the United Kingdom, which not only affected those who were turncoat spies, former Russian spies, but also affected a broader population within that United Kingdom town, within Britain.
And it's interesting, too, because Russia, in effect, has blamed the UK for not protecting Russian nationals in its country and has also demanded access to the spy's daughter now that she is clinging on to life. What factors are at play at the moment in Russia that led Putin to make such a critical misstep here?
Well, I think it's a bunch of them, right? And I think the most recent one is the fact that he was able to win this most recent re-election with such a dominant number. I mean, it was over 70%. I think he feels, and I don't know if this is justified because the electoral process is quite rigged, but he feels that he has the support of his populace. You know, everyone he was running against is either dead or disqualified, right? I mean, there was not really an opposition in this election, but nonetheless, you come out of an election with over 70%, you're going to feel pretty good about yourself. You're going to feel pretty confident about your position. The second thing that I would say really has had an effect has been that there have been so few consequences from the Trump administration since, because there was, of course, the sanctions that were imposed after the Ukraine events and the occupation of Crimea, the illegal occupation of Crimea. But since that time and since the end of the Obama administration, the beginning of the Trump administration, you're seeing very little consequence for the actions that he's taken. Congress has attempted to impose further sanctions and to exact a higher price. But President Trump and the Trump administration in general have not been able to actually both implement those increased sanctions, nor is he showing, President Trump personally, showing any inclination towards really taking any acts against President Putin.
Right.
If, in fact, the exact opposite is the case.
President Trump on Thursday mentioning Roseanne, but not Russia, in his hour-long speech in Ohio. It seemed, though, that even though President Putin won this re-election, the turnout wasn't as high as they had hoped. And you do have now this unified Western condemnation of the assassination attempt. Do you think any of that will have a lasting impact as far as tempering Putin's ambitions at all?
Actually, no. I think that the only thing that can have an effect is if you're able to apply so much pain on him as a leader and those around him, so the Kremlin cronies. But no, I think the current situation where we're seeing this tit-for-tat type of activity on the diplomatic expulsions is actually probably strengthening his power at home. What he wants to do is create this us-them reality between the West and Russia, to show Russians and the Russian population in general how really embattled they are in the international realm, how unjustly they are being treated in the international community. So no, I don't think at home it's going to affect them very much. But boy, if some of those sanctions that are being discussed, or some of the property seizures that are being discussed in the UK are affected, then those who are the elite, those oligarchs who are quite close to President Putin, start feeling the pain. Well, then you might see some modification of his behavior.
Yeah, the strategy being limit what they care about, money and access to funds. Great article. Great to chat with you, Markos Kounalakis. Thanks for your time.
Good seeing you, Errol. Thank you.